Hello and welcome. My name's Sam and this is A Little Greenhouse Creates. Thank you for joining me today. And we are on our 15th Christmas project. That's 25 projects from the 27th of October all the way down to the 1st of December. And we are on project 15 already. And this, as it's Friday, is a funky fold. So when it comes out of the envelope, it will look like this, but it opens quite spectacularly. You may have seen a few of these going around on the internet via the YouTube channels of how to create them, but this is my version. So let's bring in the supplies. So we're going to be using Modern Christmas, which is the designer series paper, and we're also going to be using Ornamental Christmas, which has been the stamp set of this week. So let me bring in my supplies. So the first thing I've got on my two pieces of black cardstock. I'm hoping we're going to be able to see everything on here. So this is the outside panel. This measures 5 1/4 by 9 1/2. Then I have this piece which measures 3 inches by 10 5/8. Now both of these need scoring and we will do that together in a moment. I then have pieces of all sorts here. So I've got a little sentiment strip, which is 3/4 inch by 1 1/2. I have two pieces, one designer series and one white cardstock. These are 4 inches by 5 1/8. Then I have got 4 panels, 4 panels of one designer series paper. Okay, they all measure 1 7/8 by 5 1/8. Don't worry, all of these measurements will be on my blog. Put my teeth back in, we'll be doing well. And then I have got 5 panels, 3 of designer series paper and 2 of white, and these all measure 1 7/8 by 2 7/8. So that's 1 7/8 by 2 7/8. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the stamping out of the way. So I've got the Christmas tree from the designers from the Ornamental Christmas, and I've also got 'Tis the Season. I'm going to stamp in my Memento black ink. So the first thing I'm going to do is ink up my Christmas tree. I'm going to make sure I've got the right glasses on so I can actually see what I'm doing. It's always a good look. So let's move that over here, bring that in, and it's a case of straight up, straight down. So here we go, and straight down, straight up. There's our Christmas tree. Perfect. Then I've got Tis the Season. Again, I'm going to ink that with my Memento. Now you can put it straight in the middle, which I think I will on this one. I didn't on the previous. I'm just going to pop it here. Oops, don't want to move that. There we go, 'Tis the Season. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the Merry Christmas. Now this I've got from my stash because it is quite a tiny sentiment. You don't have to put the sentiment on. You could just leave it blank because you've got the 'Tis the Season inside. But I'm going to have a go. Straight down and straight up. There we go. So that's all our stamping. Then put the lid back on that. Pop that aside and put these away for a moment while they dry. There we go. Okay, so now we need to do the scoring on our 2 pieces. I have borrowed my, I managed to break my trimmer from a very tall height. My own fault. Bad management of it, so I've had to borrow one from my upline Jenny. So she's got a scoring board on hers, so we're going to use it. So the first thing on this card base, which is 5 1/4 by 9 1/2, and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. I'm going to do 1/2 inch, bring up the scoreboard line, and then I'm going to turn it round to 2 5/8. So that's 4 5/8 there. And then I'm going to score with that. And then on the other end, I'm going to also do 1/2 inch. Like so. And then I'm going to turn it round and score it at 2 5 inches. Okay, so that's the scoring on that piece of paper. Then on the length, which is 3 by 10 5/8, we are going to score it at 2 1/8. So that's 2 1/8. And then 4 1/4. 4 1/4. And then we're going to turn it round to the opposite end, and we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to score it at 2 1/8. And then 4 1/4. Okay, so that's all our scoring. Best thing to do now is to start burnishing our score lines. So I'm bringing my bone folder. I'm going to bring that one out. Bring that one in. So the small line is out, the big line is in towards the middle. Same on this side. So it's big score line in towards the middle, like so, and then this one comes out. All right, so the thing to do now is to add our 4 pieces of designer series paper. I've left one behind, there it is. And these are going one on the ends, 2, one here, and then on the reverse, 1 here and 1 here. So let's do that first of all. Going to use my stamp and seal for this. I'm just going to put a bit there, straight down the middle. That's going to go on there. I'm going to make sure I've got all the way around. There we go. And the next piece. Obviously, if you've got pieces that have a pattern that follow, oh, come on, run out. Let's use glue. Then you need to make sure that your pattern follows, in suit. So what I mean is, if you've got a piece of designer series paper that's going to go here, but it has a set pattern, not so much with the stripes, this piece, then cut this piece, and then do the same with the inside. I'm just going to put, but as mine doesn't really have a pattern as such, I'm just going to make sure that I have got it in the correct places. Now we can do inside. Well, I hope you're liking our countdown to Christmas. If you have tried out any of the projects so far, I'd love to know. Please place comments below, and I will answer them as soon as I get them. Even if it's just the funky folds, it would be lovely to correspond with you. If you ever wondered, I always have a supply list, which you can find on my YouTube channel. It's always on the bottom of the description. And as long as everything is stock and hasn't gone out of season, we should be able to get you those supplies. Right, so what I've done here is both sides now have got their designer series paper on. I've just burnished these ones back on themselves. And then the next thing I'm going to do is our large piece, which is the 4 by 5 1/8. I'm actually going to put that in the middle. So again, I'm going to use my glue. I suppose if I had cut it the opposite way, I could have done this side as well. But I'm quite keen on this bright. The white just makes it pop against the black and the gold. Okay, so that's the first section done. Actually, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll turn it over. Then we've got the white piece, which again measures the 4 by 5 1/8, and that it goes on the reverse. And that's for you to put your wishes Christmas wishes on the back. There we go. Perfect. Right, so that's one way round, and we can burnish those. Now we need to do our next strip. So let's put that aside for a second. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips. So your first rectangle is going to be your Christmas tree that you stamped earlier. Then you're going to do a piece of designer series paper. Then you've got your 'Tis the Season to go on. And then we have 2 pieces again of the designer series paper. Trying to work out if I'm going this the right way. Don't think I did a pattern with them. There we go. So we're going to stick those down like that. So remember, it's the white, the pattern, the white, and then 2 patterns. Let's do that. Stick those down. Hair there. The only problems with having very long hair is the hairs do get in the way. There's one. And oops. Trying to pick up that piece, I'm dropping it left, right, and centre. 2. Bring that in. 3. And then these 2. And that one goes there. And then the last piece. I think once you have cut out all the pieces that you need for this, it's quite easy. Okay, so we're going to fold the nearest fold to the center in towards it, and then the same with this way. Okay, then we're going to fold it back on itself, and then we're going to do exactly the same with that one. So you've got like this closed book. 1 folds in, 2 folds in. Okay, so it's the way to do it. Okay, so bringing back in our second piece, I'll straighten up my piece of my board. What you need to do is you roughly need to work out where you want your center to go, your middle piece. So I'm having it as central as possible. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to score the top and the bottom of where the paper is, just on the little flap, because this little flap is what's going to keep the 2 pieces into place. Okay, so now we're going to bring in a pair of scissors. So your score line is here. You want to cut on the opposite side to the score line. So you're going to cut on this bottom one, right of the score line, and then you're just going to cut that off. There we go. It says we're getting it out, and then we do exactly the same. Your score line is here, and I'm going to score to the cut to the left of it, and then I'm going to cut down and meet it at the bottom. There we go. Come on. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the opposite side. Turn that round. So there's the score line. I'm going to go to the inside of it. Turn it round and cut off that bit. There we go. And then to the inside of that score line. With this flap, it's better to be smaller than it is too big. So if it's too big, it will show. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to notch it. So I'm going to notch that end to there. And so got like a little notch here, and then I'm going to do exactly the same on this side. Okay, and then reverse on this side. So I'm going to notch it, and then straight out to the corner again. There we go. Right, so we now have our base with our little notched pieces. These are the pieces that are going to stick to the back of our paper. So what you need to do, put it, so I'm trying to work it out. Put my teeth back in and we'll be able to do it. I'm going to run the edge of my card along a straight white line. Then I'm going to bring in my base. I'm going to make sure that the flap, this flap, does not peek out on either side. Okay, so I know that I'm looking at about 7.5. I don't know if you can see, there's a 7.5 here to make it straight. So I'm going to put a line of glue down the middle there and down the middle there. Also going to put glue on the center panel, just the center panel, and that will stick it to the middle of the card. So I'm looking for where my 7.5 is, roughly there. And I'm just going to push down and bring this up. So this is what I'm going to push down. Let's do it that way. Push down with my hand. You're obviously going to make sure there's enough glue on there. Okay, so that's coming in and that stands up like so. You're going to bring it down, make sure it's in, and then you're just going to burnish this score line. Okay, making sure that this one is down firmly. You're going to bring it in, bring it over, and you're going to burnish that line. Okay, and that closes your card, which you can then open to come here. So the next thing to do is just to decorate our Christmas tree. So as I said, I've got this Merry Christmas, which I'm going to pop on there. I'm going to use a dimensional. I'm just going to lean across here, grab my dimensionals. Way, they've all fallen down. And I'm just going to pop two, one on either end. You could just put one in the middle, but for preference, I am putting two. Take that bit off. And that bit off. There we go. Turn it over, and then that will go across there. And then I'm going to bring in one of these antique pearls, and I'm going to take one of the very tiny top ones and pop it right on the top of my Christmas tree. So that is my Christmas card, my funky fold for this week. So as I say, it's quite quick. Once you've, as you'll see, it sticks better once you've used it a bit. You can always burnish the outside folds, and that helps to keep it down as well. Right, so thank you ever so much for joining me this week. I've hoped you've liked all the projects we've created with the Ornamental Christmas. Don't forget, I'm back next week with another set of projects. So do join me then. Have a lovely weekend, and I hope to catch up with you very soon. Take care. Bye.